I liked Butchers a lot, but I really, really liked Book 2. Like, this is a great follow up. It's instantly engaging, has a lot more character. Um, yeah, so congratulations on upping the ante, I think is what I want to say.
Okay,
And
thank you.
just to back it up a little bit for people that don't know, what inspired you to make the first movie?
So I've done a lot of cinematography and on horror movies. I was the second unit cinematographer on Oz Perkins's Black Coat's Daughter, and I was with Brian Bertino, second unit cinematography on The Monster, and done a bunch of short horror stuff. I would say I'm a horror fan. I wouldn't say I'm a horror fanatic.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of my favorites are horror movies. Horror obviously pushes the boundaries. I think the reason that Butchers got made was in 2018-19. I had done a lot of TV movies. I'd done a bunch of indie stuff. I'd done a bunch of action and crime drama and stuff like that. And but the reality was I wanted to be making a lot more of my own stuff. For years, I've called it sort of service gigging on the right and then making my own stuff on the left. And sort of juggling those two and doing it that way and sort of spending my ill-gotten gains making my own shit, you know, going that way. And horror is the only mainstream theatrically capable genre that desires and rewards directors for being avant-garde.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's really interesting as a director.
Yeah.
Super interesting. Action doesn't really do it. Comedy doesn't really do it. Art house drama does it. Doesn't get anywhere in the world unless there's stars in it, etc. We all know how that goes. But horror can go all over the place, and it was interesting. I used to say you'll never find Tom Cruise in a horror movie, and then he did the remake of The Mummy, and I don't think we'll ever find Tom Cruise in a horror movie again.
He did interview with a
Uh,
vampire, so we can give him some
did
credit.
interview with a vampire. That's true. That's true. But I mean, I wouldn't necessarily call that a horror movie. I love
Yeah.
that film, but yeah, I wouldn't necessarily call it a horror movie. It's just really good, period drama and Rice. But the reality was, or still is for many, many directors, is that they're not going to get the call to do the thing they want to do until they've already done it
Yeah.
and proven themselves to do it. So Butchers became a gateway drug to making my own horror films for Grimehouse being my company's sort of inaugural voyage, the maiden voyage into horror features,
Mm-hmm.
and made it for very little money. Made it as a daytime horror, not just because it's rare, but because it's easy to light. We set up a light for one shot in that film. It was Julie Mainville's close up when she's told to put down the phone and says, "Why are you doing this?" And so that became, and then as a DP, it was just like, okay, well then it's just backlight, 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 and we shot it over 24 days. And I'm a fan of Toby Hooper's Texas Chainsaw. I liked Rob Schmidt's Wrong Turn, and I thought, well, obviously you can't do a Kill Billy movie without being referenced to those. I could think of worse franchises to be referenced to, obviously, but you can't do a Kill Billy movie. You just can't. It's not allowed. It's just going to be. It doesn't. Yeah, people would say, "Oh, it's like Wrong Turn." I'm like, well, actually, it would be called Breakdown, not Wrong Turn. They didn't take a wrong. But and then Texas Chainsaw. But because I knew that was going to be a thing, I thought, wouldn't it be interesting if they reference that genre?
Mm.
Uh, you know, as a wink to the audience. We don't actually eat people around here. That would be a little too cliche. Stuff like that. But really, the movie was made because I'd been in a relationship, and people fuck around in relationships, and you realize over time as you get older that the best answer you're going to get as to why people are shitty is because they are. That's it.
Yes.
And you don't need anything more than that. The longer you search for that, the more you're going to be disappointed. And in Raghorn, we doubled down on that, right? Where she's like, "Why are you doing this?" What is Simon saying, Butchers, when James asks him, when the Nick character asks Owen, why are you doing this? He's like, well, that's really what like, why? Because it needs doing. Like,
Yeah.
why is everybody asking a stupid fucking question?
Yeah.
And when the Sarah character asks Clyde, why are you doing this? He's like, that's what you're going with? The reason? It's the same thing, right? We're rhyming with that, except in book two. So book two came about. So at Red Hound, which is a subsidiary of Blue Fox Entertainment. So Black Mandala was the sales agent out of New Zealand, and the distributor that immediately bought it after 10 minutes of watching it was Blue Fox Entertainment and James Huntsman and the gang there. And through their Red Hound label, right? They've got the Fox and the Hound. So they called me. They picked up Butchers. Butchers was released in North America January of 21. I got a call in May of 21 to look at a script called Bunker that Michael Huntsman had written, and they were making it, and it was a passion project for them. And they had a different director on it, who was Guillermo del Toro's protege, and he had been on it for a couple of years. Left the project about 9 weeks out after they'd broken ground at Buffalo Filmworks. Were building the sets and the rest of it. They needed a director really fast. And so they were interviewing different directors. I was one of 5 that they were talking to because James was like, I really like Butchers, and Adrian can do a lot with a little. Like, why don't we talk to him? He seems pretty cool. And so I threw my, pitch into the hat. The rest of it, they bid it. Off I went and made the film. The day after we finished filming Bunker, James said, Butchers just took off. He goes, it's been out for 8 months. And he goes, and I'm already in the black. I've already made my money back as the distributor. So do you want to make another one?
Yeah.
I said, no, I'll make 2.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that.
So Bonesaw is coming out later this year.
What a title.
Book 3.
Love that.
Yeah. And so, but because I didn't want to revisit the Watsons for numerous reasons, I said I would rather Butchers be the umbrella for what we termed hack-em-ups.
Oh, love this.
And so if you have, as long as people are getting hacked up, it could be like Hannibal could be a hack 'em up. You know what I mean? Like as long as there's, sort of, the Terrifier could be a hack 'em, sort of thing. It doesn't necessarily mean slasher, but like body parts need to be getting hacked and flying the rest of it. And so you got shoot 'em ups and whodunits. So I said, well, let's just call it a hack 'em up.
Oh,
and
love it.
So as long as there were hack 'em ups, then it could be Butchers and you could go ad infinitum. As long as Spencerville was in there, there were things that would rhyme with it. There were ways to tie it in. But I said specifically to James and Blue Fox, and they were immediate, like, absolutely. Which was, I said, I want to call it Butchers Book 2, Raghorn, and Butchers Book 3, Bonesaw. And I think in the horror community, you instantly go, oh, it's a universe. Got it. I know what it is. It's totally different. And now you could go 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever, and you never know what you're going to get, and you won't get stale. And some of them could be 4/3, some of them could be anamorphic, there could be a black and white one, there could be this, there could be that. And James said, if it's Butchers and it's Adrian, we're in. And there was 0 interference on the scripts. There was 0 interference on the cuts. The only directive was fucking hack them up, Adrian.
Yes.
Give them what they came for. And there was a lot, but it also gave me a chance to rewrite the first one. in terms of the mistakes,
Right.
right? Because the purpose was to say, okay, if I'm going to do this, I get to do things I wasn't able to do in the first one, things that had come to me afterwards. I got to play Monday morning quarterback on my own film and intentionally up the ante in every way. There would still be 4 people in the car. The car would undergo a different thing. There would still be a family. They would be cannibals. There would be a twist. There would be differences. There would be more animosity in the car. There would be all of these sorts of things. So you would understand how it would rhyme, but it would harmonize and it would layer in a more interesting way. So you would go, I understand how this is a butcher's movie,
Yep.
and I understand why everything in it is better. And wouldn't it be funny if the sequel was better than the original?
And
Or if the second
it
one was
is.
better than the first? And the third one is bigger than the first two. And when Doug Phillips, my co-producer, watched the first cut of Bonesaw, he just because he sits and the lights go down and he watches the whole thing. He doesn't get involved in post-production. He comes in to just kind of give to be the fresh set of eyes. You know what I mean? The first fresh set of eyes on the cut. And he was like, fuck me, that's the biggest thing we've ever done. That was crazy. That was like really cool. And it's a hack 'em up, but it's really a hack 'em up slash 'em up. It's got a lot of slasher influence. It's got a lot of 80s slasher influence, and much like the first two, you can't tell when it's taking place specifically.
Yeah, brilliant.
So that one gets really fucking nuts.
Oh man,
that one gets really crazy. And all I can say is we finally get into Spencerville.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's what happens. We finally get into Spencerville, and it's worse.
I mean, how much glee do you get, like, conjuring the images and putting them on paper and making them a reality? Because there's so much frivolity in this particular one. I feel like there's much more humor in there, which makes it all the sicker, for the horror fans. Do you get your kicks right in this?
Do I what? Sorry.
Do you get your kicks? Like, like if I was writing this,
Oh,
I'd be like
100%.
completely in my element.
100% I do. And I had Dan Weisenberger wrote a script years ago, which I thought was pretty cool. And we turned that into Butchers. And another writer friend of mine, Colin Casagrande, I sort of gave him a pitch on Raghorn, and he wrote a draft, and then I doubled down on that. So I get kicks in 2 ways. One, I get kicks in like going crazy, but I get kicks in riffing on existing material.
Yep.
Right. So in a way, you're just like, oh, what you should have done? That would have been really sick if you'd done this or you'd done this or you'd done this. Best compliment I got after the theatrical premiere of Raghorn was this. A friend of mine came up with me and she's like, "You are one sick fuck." She smiled and walked away. Right. At first, I was like, so that was a win. And so I think it was, I just sat down. I was with Sam Huntsman today, who plays Josh in Raghorn, who undergoes a particular procedure in Raghorn. And all he said was he took some friends to the movie and didn't tell them what was going to happen to his character. Just to see their faces. And all we got from when we were in the theater was, they're not. No, they are. But they're not really going to. No, yes, they are. Yeah, okay. But now it's still not done. And then when it's done, and then 20 minutes later, it's actually still not done because there's more to come, right? All of that piece, which is actually my favorite narrative twist in the show. I think it's fun. I think to as I said, with horror and directing horror, you can be crazy with it, you can be avant-garde with it. I think Butchers is very much grounded in real, pun intended, real sort of red meat and potatoes horror.
Hmm.
You know, I really didn't think that we were reinventing the wheel on Butchers, but I was also still finding my footing as a horror director.
Mm.
And so in a way, I halfway played safe, but what it allowed me to do was riff on existing cliches intentionally and twist them and really start to explore, what is my voice as a horror director, or at least what is my current thing. So that was very much an experiment. I mean, we made it out of pocket. I wasn't expecting distribution.
Yeah.
I wasn't certainly expecting worldwide. I wasn't expecting two sequels. I wasn't expecting anything beyond how much money do I have to make this movie, go and make this crazy little movie and be wild, and at the same time have the autonomy to do that. And one of the funnest stories of Butchers was, there was no Oz. And if people have seen the film,
Hmm.
they'll know what this means. There was no Oswald for many many drafts until we were casting. Michael Swatton walked in reading for Willard.
Hmm.
He came in and read for Willard, freaked out the reader, freaked out everybody else in the room, because he did Willard as what would become Oswald,
Hmm.
and just took it to such a crazy place. He left the room, and we were like, putting that guy as Willard would be fucking. We need a new character. And so Owen and Oxford were split and subdivided into a middle brother, who became this, sort of crazy thing. And then Oxford was kept because he was a dog let out in the first scene,
Mm.
much the way Crusher is in Raghorn.
Yeah.
So in a sense, Raghorn became the version of Butchers that I didn't make because Michael's character Oswald was created 3 weeks from filming, and that whole other brotherly dynamic and Shakespeare and all of those things came about in the last few weeks of the writing. And because the train had already left the station, right? So now you're just going to keep it on the tracks and roll. And so it allowed me to be open to that exploration and be like, well, if this doesn't work at all, well, that's just the cost of doing business, and fuck it. But if it does, then, let's see what happens. And I think it's a really good thing for filmmakers to stack the deck in their favor with genre, with knowing what to give to the audience, because I think horror fans they're so dynamic because they're the they with open arms are welcoming, which is what allows directors to be avant-garde. They're welcoming of twists, turns. What are you going to do in the most saturated genre in the world?
Yeah.
You better be bringing something to the table. And if Butchers gets faulted for anything, it gets faulted for quote unquote not bringing anything to the table, unless you're at Fright Fest or you're at
Yes.
Chechamir or somewhere where the reviewers are like, are they self-aware? Are they being self-aware? They are. Okay, I get the movie, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you sit back and go, well, isn't it just a Texas remake? And so I doubled down with Raghorn, accused the killers of being people from Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and had Clyde say, no, this ain't Texas.
That's
And
right.
that be like, yeah,
Yeah.
but no.
And you kind of, and
And
you kind of, you did a reference in there as well. I think it was a reference where you had the TV monitor with the girl strung up. That's very Chainsaw Massacre right there. It's
very
clearly,
Texas
clearly.
Chainsaw.
I was talking to another horror director just this week, who's also made a very sort of gratuitous kind of self-aware film, and he was saying the biggest thing that for him that's difficult is the more you up the ante with gore and blood and goop, the harder it is to reset a set. Once you've redressed a set, once you've got this blood everywhere, is that something that's really time consuming?
It's very time consuming. The only thing that I can do to mitigate that, because he's 100% correct, is when I'm shooting, because I'm the editor, I do what Hitchcock did, which is I write it like if you read the script for Butchers or you read the script for Raghorn or for Bonesaw, um, a paragraph is a shot, and then the next paragraph is the next shot, and the next paragraph, and then the dialogue is this shot, etc. And I'll only shoot that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Even though they're shot digitally, I grew up on Super 16 and 35 millimeter. And in the indie world, you've got to make those decisions, right? So you're editing the film in camera. And you're editing the film in camera. And so I shoot it in that same way. So what that does is it allows for the blood continuity as well as the character continuity because both Butchers and Raghorn were shot in sequence. And Bunker was shot in sequence,
Mm-hmm.
which I highly recommend, guys, if you're making movies and making indie horror films, not just for the blood continuity and the rest of it, but to, unless you absolutely have to shoot a film out of sequence, shoot it in sequence.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's going to allow you to make maneuvers. Everything that you're doing is fresh to the forefront of the story. And if you can find something that's really, really interesting, you can run with it because what you're shooting doesn't owe anything to the future.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very much at the forefront of what it's doing. So now you can really start to do this. And I say that for both the creative reason and the logistical reason of that is that if something goes wrong, you've got the cushion to be able to lean into it and move the movie,
Gotcha.
an actor,
Yeah.
a location, or whatever. You can start to do this. Because if, Fincher says directing is 90% damage control, he's absolutely correct. And so it allows people to do that. So I think especially with horror, blood gags, they go wrong all the time, not alone. At every budget level, fuck you, they fuck up at every budget level.
Yeah.
Even like Bunker was like $4 million. You're still thread, duct tape, cardboard, do this camera trick, boom. It doesn't get easier when more. It's really more money, more problems. And the gags are generally bigger, and you usually think, "Oh, I'm going to go bigger with the gags," and sometimes that just really, literally blows up in your face. So yes, it is an issue, but when you can really plot out, Robert Rodriguez used to plot out when he was like making El Mariachi on 16 mil and all that sort of stuff. It's like this is going to go to here, this is going to go to here, this is going to go to here, and usually with the gore gags, indecision is very expensive. So if you can really plot it out, and when you're making indie horror, that's the star, right? The gore is the star, the blood is the star, the gags. It's like this is what we're here to see, and so you really want to pay attention to that, and so it does mitigate that to a certain extent. It does mitigate the resets. It does mitigate the cleanups. Doug likes to joke that producing horror movies is watching me throw blood all over everything and him having to come and help clean it up. And do that. And I think so as specific as you can get, like you really got to plot it out because even the best laid plans is going to leave you with a lot of blood on the walls, and sometimes it just happens that way. And sometimes the gore people send the blood in the wrong direction.
Yeah, right.
And you're rolling the camera and the blood goes all the way over here and the cannon goes that way and you hear the cannon go off and you're like,
I mean, at least the cleanup is not as problematic that way. The blood's not on camera.
Yeah, you're like, what? Oh shit. And then you realize you're cleaning a part of the room you never thought you were going to have.
That's right. Was anybody...
And you're still having to reshoot the shots. You're still having to shoot the shot that you wanted to.
Oh my God.
But it does. There is something intrinsically cathartic and fun and funny on the set. The screams, the blood, the this, the that, the thrill of doing it. There's very few types of films. No, fuck it. There's no type of film really more fun than horror to make.
Yeah.
Right? It's the screams, the gags, the this. There's something absolutely primal about it. And but it gets messy. And it's amazing. you make a TV movie, you make an action movie, and somebody gets a wardrobe rip and they get really stressed. Oh, I didn't land this. My hair got fucked up. Or, I had to fly away on this beautiful Christmas close up. Same actor, horror movie. That was amazing. I love that. Like, you were just on a Hallmark movie
Oh my god.
bitching about your hair being wrong, and I just covered you in blood, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh.
I
So
think you just answered like the last question I was going to ask you, because like the one thing on our show that our listeners know is that we love two type of movies the most. One is horror, the more extreme the better, and the other one is sappy hallmarky rom-coms. The sappier the better. We actually celebrate both in equal measure. And I was going to ask, like, is there as much fun to be had on those type of movies? But I kind of think you answered that.
no, not really, not really. So the Hallmark, lifetime of the Christmas movie formula. I've made a few of them, and they've done very well. They've rated very well around the world, because all I'm trying to do when I'm there is bring as much cinema, as crazy as that sounds. I'm trying to bring some cinema into TV movies, and it's very, very different. It's a very, very different story. It's very, very formulaic. It's desired that way, right?
Yeah.
And so, what is great about those films, making those films, directing those films, because I'm sort of a hopeful romantic. I don't think I'm a hopeless romantic. I think I'm a hopeful romantic. The reason that I think those are cool is that they actually deal with it is the sappy extreme of romance, and horror is the bloody extreme of humanity. And so there's this kind of counterbalance. I don't think I would be like a Takashi Miike or somebody like that, who basically made a career out of making the most wildly fantastical, crazy ass horror movies, and then spends the other half of his time directing the most childlike, fun kids movies.
Yeah.
Most people don't know that he does children's movies in Japan. He's very successful at it, because those are the two extremes. And I think in North American culture and Western culture, they're very, very extreme, because it's so sappy. It's so extreme. You make a Christmas movie, it's wild, because rom-coms are like, well, they got the cute need, and they got to do this, they got to do this. The kiss is always the last scene of the show, all this kind of stuff. But they're, it's almost a bit of a drag, because they're not allowed to be really that funny. They're not allowed to be really that sexy. They're not allowed to be really that stylish. However, when you're making a Christmas movie, because people would say to me, "Why do you make Christmas movies? This is so weird." I said, "My mom loves it. My mom loves Christmas movies," and they're like, "Okay, it's good." But I like making Christmas movies. Well, I mean, living in Ottawa, Canada, we get winter. We're famous for making Christmas movies, because our winters are the real deal. Which was, when you're making a Christmas movie and you're directing it, the more Christmas movie it is, the more, the better it gets. And what I mean by that is, it's not limited in any way. When you're making a TV thriller, it's thriller diet. When you're making a rom-com, it's sort of diet comedy. Whereas it's Christmas, lean into the crazy, lean into the schmaltz, lean into this. The more Christmas you make it, the better that movie is getting.
Greens and reds and all that kind of stuff.
All that kind of stuff. And so those are actually the most fun for me, because they're allowed to be the most extravagant. It's like they want more of what it is. So you're really driving to the center and bigging up what you can do. You're not avoiding anything. And so they're allowed to be really as my buddy Nick would say, they're allowed to be like the fuckingest versions of what they are, because they're allowed to be that. They're allowed to be extreme Christmas movies, right? And so when you make horror movies, you're allowed to be extreme. So I think there is an extremity crossover with those. I don't think it's strange at all to to be extreme on the romance or to be extreme. You're just like, it's so sappy and they're not holding back. It's so bloody and they're not holding back.
100%.
And
And you're giving two different audiences the same thing. They both want to have some kind of like positive reaction to what you're giving them, and whether that's gore or whether that's schmaltz, it's you're still giving people something that they can connect and attach to.
you absolutely are. And I think that that's it in both. There's a similarity in the directing where you honestly are asking yourself, am I giving them what they came for?
Yeah.
I think if it's in a drama or an art house film or an action movie, in action you probably could, but there's something a little more um, selfish or less thoughtful in terms of the audience when it comes to that. And I don't think you can think of the audience nonstop, but you do have to say to yourself, there's, they're going to do this. Or they're just going to kind of be like, imagine a horror movie made without blood. It's like a Christmas movie. You're like, there's no fucking trees in this Christmas movie. You do have to think about that. How you're going to deliver it. Horror movies don't have formula per se. They have formulaic ingredients, but once you have those ingredients, you can make whatever you want. Christmas movies have ingredients and a formula by which you do it. So horror movies are cooking and Christmas movies are baking. And so you can really be a little more artistic and crazy, whatever. But you should give it up. And now within horror, there's like, well, I don't know, is it ghost story? Is it scary or whatever? Is it bloody? Is it a hack 'em up? Is it psychological? Is it The Exorcist versus Texas Chainsaw? These are all horror movies, right? Which is crazy, and then it gets subgenred all to infinity. But yeah, I think that's
your next challenge. Your next challenge is going to be taking your most extreme Christmas movie and your most extreme horror movie and doing a cross universe.
There's been conversations about it. It's funny. There's been conversations about it, but what's really funny is that I've been told by various distributors that it's good to do a Christmas horror. It will perform 1 month of the year, and which I think to a certain extent is probably true. I mean, I'll watch, a Krampus, or I'll watch, Silent Night, Deadly Night, or I'll watch Christmas, the original. Anytime. Like, I don't care. I don't care if it's summertime. I'm still gonna watch the movie. It's totally cool. But I do know that much like Christmas movies, Christmas horror gets a bump. And because they're just like, yeah, there's just not enough of them.
Mm-hmm.
I think, is sort of the point. And there's something that is cool about the contrast and cold horror. Like when I was on the Black Hope's Daughter, we shot it in February, and there's definitely something apropos about filming horror in the winter when it's super fucking cold, and it's the unpleasantness of it is a good mix. But listen, making Christmas movies in the middle of winter is also equally unpleasant because it's cold. And for the Christmas movie fanatics out there, keep in mind sometimes this is a little something a little under the hood for you. I always feel so bad for the actors making Christmas movies because when it's really minus 30, right? And for the American listeners, minus 40 degrees Celsius is minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit. They come together at minus 40, and that happens. We've filmed in minus 40. But they're not allowed to be in huge parkas and shit. They have to be in the lightest wool, stylish jackets. They've got a nice scarf, and it's really not that cold, right? The breath will give it away. Yeah. If there's breath in the air, it's really winter. If they're walking around without breath in the air, that's foam on the ground. It's July. And this is when it gets worse for them because it's July and they've got them in wool coats.
Yeah.
So in winter, they don't have enough with the wool coat, and in summer, they're cooking. So, you look behind the monitor, and we're either in parkas with, hood, we're like, that's great cut. Or we're like hanging out in tank tops and shorts or whatever. That's great cut or whatever. Actors are always suffering, no matter the time of year they're filming. It sucks.
I love it. I
It feels
love
like
it.
that.
Awesome.
Yeah, they're not getting covered in blood, but yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. I'm gonna leave it there. Thanks so much for the chat. This movie is bonkers. Can't wait for the next one. Bonesaw. Really excited. I love that you've given us the term "kill Billy." I know you didn't coin it, perhaps, but it's the first I've heard that because I've always said Hicksploitation. So either way,
Hillbilly and hack 'em up. Yeah.
love it. Love it. So I look forward to maybe chatting again when that comes out. But thanks so much for sitting down and having a chat. I've enjoyed it.
All right, rock and roll, man.
Why are you doing this?
Sometimes evil just is.
Woo-wee.
Well, that was a close one, wouldn't you say? Go get this boy something to bite down on. He's gonna need it.
You're like those people in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Nah, this ain't Texas.